Date, time, location. That's how we're trained to start everything. But this isn't a report. This is just me, talking into a cheap little recorder on my kitchen table, hoping that saying it out loud will make it less real. It won't. But I'm going to try anyway. The date was October 17th, 2014. The time was 1942 when the call came in. The location, an unmarked gravel lot off a service road on the edge of one of those big state forests in Pennsylvania. The kind of place you only find if you're looking for trouble or for quiet. I was a Pennsylvania state trooper back then, and I thought I understood fear. I'd seen wrecks that didn't look like anything human could have walked away from. I'd knocked on doors at 3 a.m. with a hat in my hands and a name in my throat that was about to break somebody's world in half. I'd stood on the side of the highway while people screamed at me, cried to me, begged me. Fear, I thought, was something I could manage. You feel it, you breathe through it, you do your job. Not that night. That night, fear felt like something else, like something outside of me, that knew my name. The call came through like any other. Dispatch gave us the basics. Male, mid-30s, overdue from a hike. Girlfriend reported he hadn't come back before dark. His car still at the trailhead. I remember staring at the dash while the dispatcher talked, watching the little green line jump with each word. Harris, my partner, was half-turned toward the window, sipping bad coffee and complaining quietly about his back. Normal. Boring. Routine. If you listen to this because you like true scary stories, I want you to understand something before we go any further. Nobody out there that night thought they were walking into a ghost story. We thought we were going to find some guy with a twisted ankle, embarrassed as hell, maybe cold and hungry. We didn't think about the woods watching us back. The drive out to the service road was quiet. Too quiet, if I'm telling the truth. Outside, it was that kind of October where the air tastes like wet leaves and metal, and every breath feels thinner than it should. A low ceiling of clouds, no moon, no stars. Just the last thin smear of daylight dying in the west. Inside the cruiser, it was the usual blend of old coffee, fast food wrappers, and the smell of Harris's aftershave. Comforting in a weird way. We joked a little. He said something about how hikers should come with a refundable deposit. Bring yourself and all your limbs back before dark, get your money back. I laughed. I remember that. I remember the laugh dying halfway out of my mouth, because in the middle of his sentence, the world went quiet. I don't mean the radio cut out. That happens in the mountains. I mean everything stopped. No engine, no heater fan, no gravel under the tires, no distant wind against the frame. Just silence. Like someone had picked up the entire car and dropped it into a soundproof box. My ears rang, my teeth hurt. I opened my mouth to say, "Do you hear that?" And the second the first word left my lips, everything crashed back in at once. The engine growled, the heater roared, the radio crackled mid-sentence like it had never stopped. Harris jumped and grabbed the handle above the door. "Jesus, Miller, watch the road," he snapped. My hands were locked on the wheel hard enough that my knuckles hurt. Did you hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" I wanted to say, the nothing. I wanted to say, all of it. Instead, I just shook my head and said, "Nothing, forget it." But the silence stayed with me, like it had left a fingerprint inside my ears. Not real. Real. Not real. I told myself that in my head, a stupid little rhythm. Not real. Real. Not real. Just the brain glitching, that's all. We pulled into the gravel lot about 20 minutes later. There was the missing hiker's car, sitting crooked near the tree line. The dome light was still on, bleeding weak yellow into the dark. The driver door was half open, like someone got out in a hurry and never looked back. I hate open doors like that. Half-open doors feel like an interrupted decision, like someone was about to choose something and didn't finish choosing. The park ranger was standing by the trail sign, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. His truck idled a little way off, headlights cutting pale tunnels into the trees. "Evening," he said when we approached. His voice had that strained politeness to it, like he'd been out here longer than he wanted to be. We went through the basics. Yes, this was the guy's car. Yes, there was a trail. Yes, he'd signed in at the little notebook in the metal box. The ranger pulled out the logbook. The pages fluttered in the wind. "There," he said, putting a grimy finger on a name and a time. "Came through at 12:07. That's the last entry." Harris leaned in, squinting. "Anyone else on the trail?" Ranger shook his head. "Nobody signed in after him. Nobody signed out either." He hesitated. Then he added, almost under his breath, "They usually don't here." I looked up. "What do you mean they usually don't?" He licked his lips, glanced at the tree line. "Locals avoid this section after dark," he said. "We tell people not to come out here alone." "Because they get lost?" I asked. He paused, like he was deciding how much to say. "Because they don't come back," he answered. I felt that phrase settle between my ribs. Didn't come back. There are explanations for that. Rough terrain, poor visibility, panic, animals, falls, exposure. All the things you can write down in a report and feel like the world still makes sense. But the ranger's eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. He kept looking just past my shoulder toward the start of the trail. "The girlfriend said he texted her a photo of the sign when he started," the ranger went on. "Said it looked peaceful. Real quiet." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, quiet." Harris shifted his weight, impatient. "We'll head up the trail, see if we can't bump into him," he said. "You got any other search teams?" The ranger shook his head again. "Everyone else is tied up. You're it for now." Of course we were. Of course it was just us. He looked at me then, and for a second the professional mask dropped. "If you hear somebody call from off the trail," he said slowly, "don't go chasing the voice unless you can see whoever's calling." Harris snorted. "Because they might be hurt?" "Because it might not be them," the ranger replied. Not real. Real. Not real. I told myself again, local superstition, old stories, a way to scare teenagers away from the woods at night. But the ranger's face stayed serious. He handed me the logbook, then seemed to think better of it and took it back, tucking it into his jacket instead. "We'll radio if we find anything," I said. He nodded, stepped back as we opened the trunk and grabbed our gear. Flashlights, radios, first aid, routine, familiar, solid. We turned toward the trail. The trees loomed close, branches knotted together overhead like fingers intertwined in a nervous grip. As my boots hit the packed earth at the entrance, a thought slid into my head, cold and uninvited. It feels like walking into a mouth. We stepped under the canopy, and the sounds of the lot behind us dimmed like somebody had turned a dial. The idling truck, the faint hum of the road far off, gone. The forest pressed in on all sides. No birds, no insects, no rustle of small things. Just the quiet crunch of our footsteps and the thin white beam of our flashlights cutting through trunks and shadows. Man, Listen to that, Harris muttered after a few minutes. Nothing. It's like the whole place is holding its breath. Yeah, I said softly. Too quiet. Cliché or not, it was true. My skin itched. The back of my neck prickled. Every few steps I found myself glancing over my shoulder at the shrinking patch of faint light where the trail met the lot. Not real. Real. Not real. I focused on the trail, on the job. Left, right, scan. Call the name. Listen. I don't know how far we went before it happened. The trail curved, dipped a little, and my flashlight picked up something on the ground. A scuffed patch of dirt, a shallow footprint, the edge of a water bottle tucked halfway under a root. Got something, I said. We both crouched. Harris picked up the bottle, turning it over in his hand. Same brand as the one in the car, he said. Looks like he dropped it. Or threw it, I said. We both looked up then, instinctively scanning the darkness beyond the edge of our narrow beams. The forest stared back. And that was when we heard it. A voice. A man's voice. Thin and strained, but clear as if he were standing right in front of us. Hello? Is someone there? We both straightened up, flashlights swinging. State police, Harris called. Where are you? Keep talking. Silence. We waited. My heart climbed into my throat. Then, from deeper in the trees, a little to our right, Hello? Is someone there? Same words, same tone, same rhythm. Too much the same, like a phrase being played on loop. Not real. Real. Not real. I swallowed. Sir, call out again, I shouted. Tell us if you're injured. We stood there listening. The air felt thick. Think he's hurt? Harris whispered. I don't know, I said. It sounded... The voice came again, but this time, it came from behind us. Hello? Is someone there? The exact same words, the exact same tone. Only now, it was coming from the direction of the trailhead, the way we had just walked. Slowly, very slowly, we turned around. Our flashlight beams fell on nothing but the narrow path and the straight trunks of trees lining it. Nobody there. No movement. Just the echo of that voice still vibrating in my bones, like it had crawled under my skin instead of through my ears. That was the moment when the night stopped being routine. I didn't have the words for it yet, didn't have the courage to admit it to myself, but looking back, I can tell you, the first part of that night ended right there, on that curve in the trail, with those words hanging in the air like a question we should never have answered. The next part? That's when everything started to unravel. The next part of the night. That was when things started to feel wrong, in a way I still don't have words for. Like the air around us had decided we were intruders, and it was only being polite about it for now. Harris kept looking over his shoulder, flashlight cutting shaky white arcs over the trees. I kept mine pointed forward, forcing myself to focus on the ground, the prints, the broken twigs, anything that felt like evidence instead of imagination. You heard that, right? Harris whispered. His voice wasn't the voice of a man who was calm or collected or in control. It was tight, thready, pulled thin. Yeah, I said, and even I didn't sound like myself. The voice we'd heard back there still hung in the air, still clung to the spaces around us like mist. It had said the same phrase from two different places at once. Human, but not. Close, but not close enough. Not real. Real. Not real. We kept walking because that's what the job demands. Because turning around without answers is harder than pushing forward into the unknown. Because once you start thinking you're hearing impossible things, you rely on your training to drown out the fear. The forest pressed tighter around us. The trail narrowed. The canopy leaned closer overhead. The silence was unnerving. A total lack of wildlife that didn't feel natural. No rustling, no chirping, no flutter of wings. Just the faint whisper of leaves far above us, too high to be comforting. "This place is dead," Harris muttered. "It's listening," I corrected without meaning to. He shot me a look. "Can you not do the creepy poetic thing right now?" I didn't answer, because it wasn't poetry. It wasn't metaphor. It was instinct, and my instincts were screaming. Turning to softer dirt. We found the first sign of the missing man about 10 minutes deeper into the trail. A scuffed patch of earth, a torn piece of gray fleece snagged on a low branch. "Matches what he was wearing," I said. Harris held the fabric up with gloved fingers, brow furrowed. The fabric trembled in the faint wind. No, not wind. A subtle movement, almost like breath. We both noticed it and didn't mention it. We walked on. 5 minutes later, we found his flashlight. Crushed. Bent nearly in half. The metal casing looked stepped on, but by something heavier than any man. "He must have dropped it," Harris said, though he didn't sound sure. Or something made him drop it. We stood up together. The woods around us watched. I could feel it. The air had changed, charged, as if waiting for us to speak the wrong word or take the wrong step. Then the voice came again. "Help me." A whisper, a plea, a sound that was unmistakably human, but shaped wrong, as if spoken by someone who was still learning how to form words. "Direction?" Harris whispered. I turned slowly, listened harder. The voice didn't have a direction. It echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Help me," from our left. "Help me," from the head. "Help me," from behind. Every repetition was perfect, identical, duplicated, not spoken, not real, real, not real. "I don't like this," Harris murmured. "We're close," I lied, because I had no idea where we were. The forest had swallowed even the idea of distance. We moved in tighter formation, flashlights trembling in our hands. Then, movement. A silhouette standing still between two trees ahead. "Sir, state police," I called. "Don't move." The figure didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react. It just stood there, hunched slightly forward, one arm dangling too low. We approached slowly, methodically, training, keeping our feet steady even as our minds screamed to run. "Sir, can you hear us?" Harris tried again. Nothing. The figure leaned forward, tilting instead of stepping, like its bones didn't know what hinges were. Its head turned toward us. Not naturally, not with muscle and tendon, but with a dragging motion, like something inside was pushing the face around from behind. My flashlight hit its features. The face was... God, it was wrong. Not mutilated, not bloody, just not correct. Like whoever shaped it had only seen a human once from the distance. Eyes too open, mouth slack in an expression that didn't belong to any emotion I recognized. And then, "Hello?" came from behind it. Not from the mouth, from something else entirely. "Is someone there?" Harris took a step back. "Nope," he whispered. "We're done." We can't just leave him, I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure he was a him anymore. The figure drifted a step closer. The ground didn't shift beneath it. It moved like a shadow that had forgotten how shadows work. Back up, I whispered. Now! We moved as one, flashlights shaking, breaths shallow. We turned to retreat, to run, to get back to the trailhead. But the trail was gone, completely gone. Where the path had been moments before, now stood solid rows of mature trees. No footprints, no disturbed soil, no trace of passage. It was as if the forest had closed a door behind us. Miller, Harris whispered, where's the path? Where is it? Not real. Real. Not real. The truth hit like cold water. We were lost. Not misplaced. Not confused. Lost. By design. The woods weren't letting us leave. And whatever that thing was behind us, it knew we had just realized it. The first section of the night ended there, with the forest rearranging itself and the darkness leaning closer. The next section began with the understanding that we were not searching for a missing man anymore. We were being hunted. We didn't run. Running would have meant panic, and panic would have gotten us killed faster. So we backed away instead. Slow steps, controlled breaths. Our flashlights kept sweeping over the trunks, trying to find even the smallest gap, any sign of the trail we'd just walked. Nothing. Just trees. Too straight, too uniform, too many of them for this part of the forest. It was like something had placed them here deliberately, blocking our escape. Behind us, the figure hadn't moved, not in the way movement is supposed to look, but every time my light passed over it, it felt a fraction closer. Miller, Harris whispered, what do we do? We think, I said, though thinking felt impossible. We keep our heads. We find another way out. How? The forest doesn't match the map anymore. He swallowed dryly. None of this matches anything. He was right. This wasn't terrain confusion or faulty memory. This was geometry misbehaving. We moved sideways, a wide circle away from the figure, trying to put distance between us and it without turning our backs completely. Branches snapped under our boots. Leaves whispered. But everything else remained dead quiet. Then we heard it again, but not the voice this time. Something else. A breath. A slow, dragging inhale, like lungs learning how to breathe for the first time. It came from above. We both raised our lights, and the beams caught something pale, hugging the underside of a branch overhead. Something with fingers dug deep into the bark as if it were crawling upside down across the canopy. Jesus, Harris whispered, voice cracking. The thing froze at the light, limbs twisted at impossible angles, face pressed flat against the branch as if listening. Not real. Real. Not real. Miller, Harris whispered again, barely audible. Tell me that's an animal. It's not, I said. The thing's head rotated, too far, too slow, until both of its wide, wrong eyes fixed on us. It opened its mouth, and the voice of the missing hiker flowed out. Help me. But the lips didn't shape the words. The sound leaked out from somewhere behind the throat, like a recording coming from a hollow space inside it. Back, move back, I hissed. We stepped slowly, guiding each other by touch, flashlights shaking as they tracked the creature's unnatural stillness. Then it dropped. Not onto the ground, onto another branch. Then another. Then another. A sequence of soft, sickening thumps as it moved through the trees with the grace of something that had learned human joints wrong. It circled us, not approaching, just repositioning, studying. We heard another sound then, a radio crackle. Both of our units flickered with burst static, then a voice. "Miller," followed by, "Miller, please help." It was my own voice. I felt my stomach drop. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I didn't transmit. I didn't say." But the voice repeated, clearer now, layered with wrong undertones. "Please help. Please help." Harris slapped his radio, panic rising. "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" "It's not the radio," I said. "It's it." The creature perched above us twitched, and then the trees around us shifted. Not bent, not swayed. Shifted. A trunk moved a foot to the left. A branch uncurled from another like a hand. The forest rearranged itself with a slow, groaning creak. "Miller," Harris whispered, This forest isn't right." The creature inhaled again, that long, learning breath, and then its voice changed. It spoke with my voice this time. "Hello? Is someone there?" The exact tone I had used earlier when I first called out into the darkness. Not real. Real. Not real. I felt cold down to my bones. "We need to move," I said. "Now!" We angled ourselves to the left, choosing a direction that felt slightly less hostile. A narrow point between two trunks where the forest wasn't as dense. The creature didn't follow. It just watched, head tilted like a curious child. For a moment, I let myself hope it would let us go. But then it whispered, with 100 overlapping voices, the missing hikers, mine, Harris's, and voices I didn't recognize. "Not that way." We froze. The forest fell silent again. And slowly, painfully slowly, we realized it wasn't warning us. It was savoring us. And the second section of the night ended there, with something perched in the trees above us, borrowing our voices, studying our fear, and deciding whether it was time to take us or time to play with us a little longer. There's a point in every search, every missing person call, where something shifts inside you, where you stop looking for someone and start looking at the place where they disappeared. And in those woods, that shift happened fast. Too fast. The forest had begun rearranging itself around us, twisting the trail into something unfamiliar and predatory. The creature in the trees watched us with widening curiosity, tilting its head like it was filing us away in some internal catalog. But then, it vanished. Not by jumping away, not by dropping to the ground. Just gone. One moment clinging to a pine trunk, the next replaced by empty bark and silence. Silence thicker than anything I'd ever heard. "Miller," Harris whispered. "I don't hear it anymore." "That doesn't mean it's gone," I replied. He nodded, swallowing hard. He knew I was right. We moved forward, carefully, slow, flashlights low. The ground here was packed harder, and for the first time since losing the trail, the forest opened a little. A clearing, a small one, uneven, filled with old growth and clusters of ferns nearly as tall as our knees. That's when my light hit something in the dirt. A footprint. Bare, human, but wrong. The toes dug too deep, the arch too long, the heel angled sharply inward like the person who made it wasn't used to wearing feet. "What the hell?" Harris whispered, kneeling to inspect it. His breath fogged in the cold air. "This is fresh. Had to be made less than an hour ago, maybe less." I crouched beside him. Human or not, it wasn't an animal print. And it wasn't alone. They circled the clearing, some facing inward, some facing outward, like someone, or something, had been pacing here. Waiting. Not real. Real. Not real. "Miller," Harris said quietly, "if this guy's barefoot out here in the cold, he wouldn't be walking clean like this. He'd be bleeding, leaving drag marks, doing something that makes sense." "Nothing about this makes sense," I murmured. He didn't argue. We continued across the clearing, eyes scanning the ground, the trees, the low canopy overhead. My flashlight beam caught the edge of a structure, wood, rotted and leaning precariously. It wasn't a cabin, not a ranger shelter. It looked older, much older. A rough lean-to against a large boulder built from mismatched planks and branches tied together with a combination of rope and vines, half collapsed, smelling of wet rot and something metallic beneath the decay. As a loose board shifted in the wind. "What is that?" Harris whispered. "Not on any map I've seen," I said. He lifted his flashlight. The interior was dark, but the beam revealed something on the walls, scratches, deep, carved lines. Not words, not symbols. Patterns. Repeating loops, spirals, claws dragging in circles until the wood cracked. "What do you think did that?" Harris asked. "A person," I said, then quieter. "Or something trying to be one." We stepped inside. The structure was colder than the rest of the forest. The air felt trapped, preserved somehow. My breath puffed white as soon as I exhaled. Inside there were photographs pinned to the wooden slats. Dozens of them. Old, weather-damaged, faces blurred by rain and mold. But the bodies looked recent. Hikers, campers, men, women, teenagers, missing persons spanning decades. People we hadn't known were connected. Not real. Real. Not real. "Miller," Harris whispered, his voice trembling. These are old cases. Some before I was born." My eyes drifted to one picture near the top. A man standing at the edge of this very forest. Expression blank. Eyes too wide. What if... I stopped. No. Impossible. Impossible. But the thought wouldn't leave me. What if the missing never died? What if something kept them, changed them, learned from them? Harris backed away from the wall. "We need to call this in," he said. "We need backup. A whole damn department. This is bigger than a missing person case." He raised the radio, thumb pressing the transmit button. Nothing. Just static. Not even the comforting background hiss of an open channel. Then, under the static, faint and stretched thin, "Miller. Harris. Help." The missing man's voice, but distorted, like someone speaking through broken speakers. Harris dropped the radio. It hit the dirt with a thud. "We're leaving," he said. "I don't care where the trail went. I'll tear through the trees if I have to." Before I could answer, something tapped against the wood behind us. Not loud, just a gentle knock. We spun around. Nothing. Another knock, from the opposite wall. Then another, above us. Then suddenly, 3 knocks at once, surrounding us like a triangle closing in. Not real. Real. Not real. "Miller," Harris whispered. "It knows we're here." I reached for my flashlight, gripped it hard. Then we should leave before it decides what to do with that information. We stepped out of the shelter. The clearing was different. The trees were closer, the air thicker. The footprints, gone. Something had changed again, because as we stepped into the open, from somewhere in the forest behind us, the missing man's voice called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" But now it sounded eager, almost excited. And that was how the first section of Chapter 2 ended, with the understanding that whatever was in these woods, it wasn't mimicking us by accident. It was learning. The forest shifted after that call. Not loudly, not suddenly, but with a soft, living patience, like something stretching itself awake after a long sleep. We stood in the clearing, flashlights trembling in our hands. The last echoes of that eager voice still clung to the air. It shouldn't have sounded happy. Voices calling for help are desperate, panicked, broken. This one? This one sounded like it had been waiting for us to hear it. "Did you hear that tone?" Harris whispered. "Yeah," I said. "Not right." "No," I murmured. "Not right at all. Not real. Real. Not real." The clearing looked wrong now, subtly but undeniably. The trees were closer, the ground uneven where it had been smooth moments before. The lean-to, had it leaned that far earlier? Had the roof been that low? The forest wasn't just growing. It was adjusting itself. "Miller," Harris whispered, "I don't think we're in the same place anymore." "We haven't moved that far," I said. "That's not what I meant." He was right. Something deeper had shifted, something spatial, almost geometric. Like the forest was folding itself around us, rerouting the paths between points. I stepped forward and brushed my hand along a nearby trunk. It didn't feel like normal bark. It felt warm. Not warm like sun, but warm like breath. "Let's move," I said. "Any direction that takes us out of this clearing." We chose a gap between 2 trees, wide enough to pass through, narrow enough to feel like a throat. We walked in silence for several minutes, or at least it felt like minutes. Time grew slippery. My watch ticked normally, but the spacing between breaths, between heartbeats, felt inconsistent. The trees changed subtly with every dozen steps, a branch in a different place, a trunk bending where it hadn't before, the ground rising, the ground falling. Subtle rearrangements, like someone was shuffling the deck of the world. Not real. Real. Not real. "Stop," Harris whispered suddenly. I froze. "What is it?" "Listen." At first I heard nothing. Then I realized that was the problem. No footsteps. No wind. No rustling. Not even our own breathing. It was as if the forest itself had inhaled and refused to exhale. The silence pressed against my ears like altitude change. Then, the sound returned all at once. Faint, like reality snapping branches rustled. Something cracked in the distance. A bird cawed overhead. The first animal sound we'd heard all night. Except, it wasn't a bird. The caw stretched too long, dipped too low, and broke off halfway like the thing making it wasn't sure how the call was supposed to end. Harris whispered, "It's learning to sound like things, isn't it?" I didn't answer. We pushed deeper, picking a direction at random. The forest thickened, the pathless ground forcing us to move slower, knee-high ferns brushing against our legs. My flashlight caught something ahead. Fabric. Gray fleece. The missing man's shirt hung from a branch about 7 feet off the ground, perfectly draped, sleeves dangling. No tears, no dirt. Like someone had placed it there, gently. Harris swallowed hard. Why would he take off his shirt in this cold? He didn't, I whispered. You think it's bait? We backed away, slow, controlled steps. Soft, not words, just shapes of vowels, like something practicing speech. I swept my flashlight toward the sound. Something slipped behind a tree, just fast enough to evade the beam, slow enough that we could see a flash of gray flesh and fingers longer than they should have been. Harris spun around. It's circling, he whispered. No, I said. It's herding. Another rustle, to our left. A third, to our right. The forest came alive, not with wildlife, but with motion. Branches bending, ferns rippling, shadows shifting. The mimicry grew louder. Help me, from ahead. Is someone there? From behind. Then, Miller. My name, spoken in my partner's voice, and a dozen other voices beneath it. Not real, real, not real. I tried my radio again. Static. Thick, suffocating static. Then, through the distortion, a faint voice. Turn around. I stiffened. That wasn't the missing man. Wasn't Harris. Wasn't me. It was a woman's voice. Soft. Urgent. And absolutely human. Turn around. Now. I looked at Harris. The color had drained from his face. You heard that too? He whispered. Yeah. Slowly, very slowly, we turned. And the forest behind us was gone. Or rather, the forest had become something else. Trees arranged in a perfect corridor. Straight lines, equal spacing. A path that hadn't existed before. A path meant for us. Don't, Harris whispered. His voice trembled. It wants us to go that way. Yes, I said. And anything else keeps us here with it. He shut his eyes tight for a moment. When he opened them, I saw the fear shift into something more dangerous. Utter desperation. Which direction do we take? He asked. I looked at the impossible corridor, the perfect line of trees, the symmetry no forest should naturally form. We take the path it made, I said, because something else in these woods doesn't want us to. Harris swallowed. He nodded, turning to soft leaves. As we stepped into the corridor, the trees seemed to lean closer, as if listening, as if inhaling. The forest hummed around us, a low vibration, like a distant engine or a heartbeat beneath the soil. Not real. Real. Not real. Then from somewhere impossibly close, just inches from my ear. Good, the whisper breathed. And the second section of Chapter 2 ended with the sickening realization that we weren't walking out. We were being allowed deeper. When we stepped into that corridor the forest made, that impossible straight-line path carved by no human hands, I felt something shift under my feet. Not the ground, not the soil. Something deeper. A kind of recognition. Like the woods had been waiting for us to choose it. The trees towered on both sides, perfectly aligned. Too perfect. Their trunks equidistant, their branches forming a vaulted canopy overhead, the way cathedral beams meet in prayer. "It's a trap," Harris whispered. "Everything is a trap now," I said. He didn't argue because he couldn't. The truth was laid bare in the geometry around us. We walked. Not quickly, not slowly, just forward because backward didn't exist anymore. The forest watched. You could feel the weight of eyes behind every trunk, listening for each breath we took. My flashlight glided over the bark. Patterns etched into the wood caught the light. Spirals, repeating lines, finger-shaped furrows that had dug deep into the grain. The same markings from the lean-to, repeated here, and here, and here. Whoever had made them, whatever had made them, it had been here a long time. "Miller," Harris whispered, "what if this isn't new?" "What do you mean?" "What if whatever's out here didn't show up tonight?" He swallowed hard. "What if it's always been here?" Not real. Real. Not real. The corridor narrowed as we moved. Branches dipped closer. Roots curled above the earth like veins pushing up beneath skin. The air darkened, although the sky was still dimly visible. Then, something moved. Not the figure from before, not the flicker of a silhouette. This movement was above us, in the canopy. A scraping sound, slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging across wood. "Miller," Harris said, voice cracking. "Look up." I did. At first I saw nothing, just black branches woven together in impossible patterns. Then my flashlight caught it, a shape clinging to the underside of a branch, long-limbed, bent at wrong angles. Head tilted so far to one side it looked broken, its arms wrapped around the wood like a spider's legs, holding effortlessly despite gravity. Its face was upside down relative to us, eyes wide and reflective like wet glass. It watched us without blinking. "Don't run," I whispered. "Who said anything about running?" Harris hissed back. His voice shook so hard the words barely formed. The creature shifted, not climbing, not crawling. It moved like it was adjusting itself inside its own skin. Then, in a voice that wasn't human or animal, the forest whispered through it. "Stay." The sound was not its own. It was the wind speaking, pushed through a hollow something wearing human shape. Harris broke. He spun and fired his weapon, 3 shots into the canopy. No echo, no impact sound. The shots were devoured by the air. The creature didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't move until Harris's weapon clicked empty. Then, it tilted its head further, curious, leaning in to observe him. Harris stepped backward, cursing. "No, no, 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 what is that? What is that?" His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard. "Harris, focus. Listen to me. We have to get out. We have to—" His words cut off, because suddenly the forest had gone silent again. That heavy, suffocating silence that made you feel pinned in place. Then, from directly behind us, the missing man's voice echoed. "Help me." We turned. The figure from earlier, the slack-faced, wide-eyed shape, stood 30 feet down the corridor. Its arms hung lower now, its posture more puppet than human. It opened its mouth, slow, slow, and whispered, "Miller." This time, the voice was mine. Not real. Real. Not real. I felt my knees weaken. The figure stepped closer, or slid closer, one leg bending backwards before dragging itself into alignment. Twigs snapped under its feet. The woods moaned. "Back up," I whispered. "Harris, back up!" But Harris wasn't looking at the figure. He was staring into the trees to our right, mouth open in silent horror. "Harris? Harris, look at me!" He pointed a shaking finger at the branches. Something was hanging there. Not the creature from before. Something else. A shape. A human shape. Upside down. High above the ground. Suspended by nothing. We both shone our lights up, and I saw Harris's face staring back at me. His own face. Eyes open, expression slack, mouth frozen mid-breath. "What?" Harris choked. "What is... Miller, what is that?" The duplicate Harris blinked. Slow, mechanical. Then its mouth opened, and in a perfect imitation of my voice it said, "Not real. Real. Not real." My blood ran cold. The real Harris let out a strangled sob, stumbling backward. His boot caught a root. He went down hard. The woods inhaled around us, a deep, hungry breath. My flashlight flickered violently. The corridor of trees warped, leaning inward, bending like ribs closing around a lung. "Miller, help!" Harris screamed. The creature above us, the figure behind us, the duplicate in the trees, they all whispered in unison, "Stay." And the first section of Chapter 3 ended there, with Harris on the ground, 3 impossible versions of us closing in, and the forest preparing, eagerly, to take what it believed it was owed. Harris's scream ripped through the corridor, bouncing off the trunks like a trapped bird, but the woods swallowed it almost instantly, muffling it into nothing. I lunged toward him, grabbing his vest, hauling him to his feet. His flashlight clattered to the ground, spinning wildly and casting frantic ribbons of light across the bent trees. "Get up!" I barked, pulling him upright. "Harris, move!" But Harris was staring past me, not at the creature in the branches, not at the figure mimicking my voice. He was staring at himself, the duplicate version of him hanging in the trees. His eyes were locked onto that slack, glassy expression. His body trembled like his skeleton had turned to water. That's me," he whispered. "No," I said quickly. "No, it's not. It's not you. Listen to my voice." But he wasn't listening. He stepped backward, stumbling over roots, reaching out one shaking hand toward the hanging shape. "It's me," he repeated softly, as if hypnotized. "Miller. That's me." Not real. Real. Not real. The duplicate Harris blinked again, its pupils dilated unnaturally, its mouth opened just slightly, enough for a sound to slip out. But the sound wasn't his voice. It wasn't mine. It was a chorus, a layered whisper of dozens of voices, male, female, child, old, all speaking the same broken phrase. "Come back. Come back. Come back." Harris clapped his hands over his ears. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" I grabbed him by the arms. Look at me, Harris. Look at me! He did. Just long enough for me to see the exact moment something inside him cracked. The fear, the raw, animal panic that had been simmering all night, finally overwhelmed whatever training, logic, and humanity he had left. He screamed again. But this scream was different. Not fear. Not terror. This one sounded like his mind splintering. Miller, it has me! It has me! It has me! No, it doesn't, I insisted. You're here. You're with me. We're getting out. But he shook his head violently. No, he whispered. No, I'm not. It already took me. And then, before I could stop him, he tore himself away from my grip and ran deeper into the corridor. Harris! I shouted. Stop! I chased him, branches whipping my face, roots grasping at my boots, the forest pulling at me with invisible hands. But Harris was fast, terrified fast. He sprinted like a man trying to outrun his own shadow. The trees around us warped as he moved, bending toward him, birthing new branches that reached like fingers, trying to pull him inward. Harris! I screamed again. The woods swallowed the name like it was nutritious. He vanished around a bend that hadn't been there moments ago. Miller! His voice, distant now, echoed once, twice, 3 times. But each echo was wrong, off, too identical. Then the echoes overlapped, mimicked themselves. Miller, 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 like something sampling the sound. And then, one final scream, cut short, abrupt, swallowed whole. Silence. I skidded to a stop, chest heaving, flashlight beams swinging wildly over trunks and shadows that all seemed to lean away from me. Or toward me. I couldn't tell. The forest inhaled again, that long, deep, hungry breath. And then, from somewhere impossibly close, as if a mouth hovered inches from my neck, a whisper. He's not gone. I spun around, weapon drawn. Nothing. He's here. Another voice. Female this time. Soft. Sad. He's with us now. A child's voice joined. Stay too. The trees around me blurred. The corridor folded into itself. The world tilted like a carnival mirror. Not real. Real. Not real. Not real. Real. Not real. I clamped my eyes shut, willing myself not to fall into the sound, not to let the forest pull me apart the way it did Harris. When I opened my eyes, the corridor was gone. The perfect path of trees had vanished, replaced by something new. A clearing, a circular one, a place that felt wrong. Like a heartbeat pulsed beneath the soil, I stepped inside. Something lay at the center. Something small, something metallic. I approached, slowly. It was Harris's radio. Still on. Still hissing with static. I picked it up, hand trembling. Dispatch, this is Trooper Miller, I rasped. Do you copy? Do you? The speaker crackled, a long whine of interference. Then, Miller. Harris's voice. But not from memory. Not from mimicry. He whispered clearly. Don't follow me. My blood froze. Then a second voice, my own, layered over his. Don't follow yourself. The forest shifted again, branches bent, shadows lengthened. The clearing tightened like a noose, and I realized I needed to run. I needed to leave before the woods chose what to do with me. The second section of Chapter 3 ended there, with the radio crackling in my hand, the forest watching from every angle, and a truth I could no longer deny. Harris wasn't missing. Harris wasn't dead. Harris wasn't Harris anymore. The woods had taken him, changed him, and it wanted me next. I don't remember running, not the first few steps, not the moments after I dropped Harris's radio, but I know I ran. Because suddenly the trees were blurring past me, my lungs were acid, and the night air tore at my throat like broken glass. I didn't think, didn't plan, didn't try to navigate. I just moved, letting instinct pull me through the twisting dark like a rope I couldn't see but somehow trusted. I don't know how long it took. Time didn't behave properly in there. Minutes stretched, seconds snapped, hours folded in on themselves. Not real, real, not real. My flashlight flickered, wavered, then died entirely. I ran in total blackness. Branches lashed my face, roots clawed my ankles, but the thing behind me, the thing wearing my partner's voice, didn't make a sound. It didn't need to. I could feel it. In my spine, in my teeth, in the soft place behind my eyes. Every time my foot struck the ground, it felt like the forest struck back. Then, finally, I saw light. Not much, just a pale smear between the trees up ahead. And human shapes. "Hey! Hey!" I screamed. My voice cracked, but I forced it out again. "Help!" I stumbled into the clearing, the real clearing, the one near the trailhead. Flashlights whipped toward me. Officers, rangers, 2 EMTs. One grabbed my arm, another caught me as my knees buckled. I tried to speak, to tell them Harris was still inside, but all that came out was a trembling whisper. "It's still in the trees. It's still there." They asked questions, a dozen voices overlapping. Where had I been? Was I injured? Where was Harris? What direction did he go? Did he have his radio? Did I see an animal? I couldn't answer. Not then. Not in words that made sense. Because the forest behind them, the line of trees beyond the floodlights, wasn't still. It pulsed. Something shifted between the trunks, a silhouette. Not Harris. Not anyone human. It leaned forward, watching. "The miller," a voice whispered, not loud, not obvious, but I heard it, inside my teeth. I screamed. They sedated me. The official report says they found me alone, disoriented, possibly concussed. No sign of Harris. Search teams combed the woods for 15 days. Dogs, drones, volunteers. They found nothing. Not a boot print, not a shred of cloth, not a body. His disappearance was ruled accidental, lost in the terrain, presumed deceased. Case closed. But it wasn't closed for me. I told the department what I saw, or tried to. They sent me to a psychologist, then mandatory leave, then early retirement. I stopped trying to explain after that, because the truth wasn't something anyone wanted to hear, and it wasn't something that stayed in those woods. Sometimes, Usually around 2:14 a.m., I hear knocking on my window. Soft, rhythmic, deliberate. Sometimes I hear footsteps on my porch. Sometimes I hear my own voice whispering from the tree line. Help me. But those are the gentle nights, the quiet ones. Other nights, it tries harder. 2 weeks ago, I woke up to my radio, the one I keep on a shelf in the bedroom, long since disconnected, crackling to life. Miller! Harris's voice. Soft, wet. Not breathed through lungs anymore. I'm outside. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Come help me. Then, my own voice echoed behind it. Come back. I smashed the radio against the wall. Didn't matter. The whispers kept going long after the plastic cracked. Come back to the woods. You left us. You shouldn't have left. Sometimes, standing at the sink late at night, I feel someone behind me. Not touching. Not breathing. Just waiting. And I know, with the kind of certainty you don't recover from, that if I turn around quickly enough, I'll see Harris standing there. Or the thing that used to be Harris. Or the thing wearing his voice. Or the thing wearing my face. Not real, real, not real, but it is real. Too real. And I think it followed me. I think it left the forest the same night I did. I think it learned enough to slip between places, between dark corners, between shadows that don't move the way they should. Tonight, it's closer. The knocking comes more often now, sometimes soft, sometimes shaking the whole frame of the window. Just before I hit record on this device, I heard it whisper something new. Not hello. Not help. Not my name. This time, it whispered, let me in. If you're listening to this, I need you to understand something. The forest didn't take my partner. It changed him. And it wants me back. Maybe it wants more than me. Because once you hear your own voice calling from the dark, once the woods know your shape, once the mimicry begins, it doesn't stop. It never stops. Someone is on my porch now. I can hear the boards creaking underfoot. Slow, measured, too heavy to be human, too careful to be animal. It's calling my name again. Miller, open the door. I'm not opening that door. I'm not going outside. I'm not going back to those woods. But it doesn't need me to. It already found me once. And once something finds you in those forests, it doesn't lose you. Ever. I can see a shadow at the window. Tall, bent, head tilted too far. It's whispering again. If this recording is found, don't come looking for me. Don't go near those woods. Don't answer voices in the dark. Don't follow a call that sounds too familiar. And whatever you do, don't acknowledge the thing that knows your shape and wears your voice. And if you're hearing this, it already knows you. You don't believe me, do you?